I had always enjoyed the solitude of our old creaky house. A feeling of homesickness crept up in me like a cold hand whenever I dwelled on how empty it was with my parents gone. But tonight would be different. Tonight, I had the house to myself, and I planned to relish every second of my newfound freedom. I flipped through the mail as the evening faded into night. The light from the kitchen dimmed until only the light over the sink illuminated the darkness. Soon, there was nothing but silence. The clock ticked towards midnight. I decided it was time to sleep. I dove beneath the blankets and curled up in a ball, my mind filled with happy thoughts about the days ahead. I must have drifted off into a deep sleep because I was suddenly jolted awake by an unexpected noise. It was loud and jarring, like shattering glass or a thunderclap. My heart raced as I quickly sat up in bed, blinking away the fog from my sleepy eyes. Before I could process what had happened, I heard a faint banging coming from downstairs. My breathing quickened and my stomach churned with worry at this strange disturbance. Something wasn't right. This house seemed to have come alive. With trembling hands, I reached for the lamp on my nightstand and flipped it on. The entire room lit up with a warm glow that provided me just enough courage to take that first step off the bed. I tiptoed around furniture as I made my way towards the door. I took a deep breath before slowly opening it, wincing as it creaked. Peering cautiously out into the hallway, I could see that its darkness stretched on endlessly. With one more steadying breath, I timidly ventured down the hallway, searching for the source of the noise. My feet moved inch by inch towards the stairs, my steps careful and quiet. The old wood underfoot creaked with each step, as though warning me to be still and remain hidden. As I descended in eerie silence, a chill ran up my spine, and I felt my stomach clench in fear. Ahead of me was darkness so thick that even the moonlight from outside did not penetrate it. Only an oppressive silence surrounded me. I strained my ears to try and catch any sound, but heard nothing. It was then that I noticed something strange. A faint blue light seemed to be emanating from downstairs. Fearful, yet curious, I continued walking until reaching the bottom floor of our old house, where a strange figure stood in the corner, illuminated by the mysterious light. It was tall and faceless, wrapped in a dark cloak with long, bony fingers that seemed to reach out towards me. I could feel my heart pounding as I stood there, paralyzed with fear. Was this a ghost? A specter? Whatever it was, I knew one thing for sure. I wanted nothing more than to run back upstairs and hide. But before I could move, the figure began to move. It started slowly at first, its bony fingers twitching as it walked towards me. Its movements became more frantic and aggressive with each step, and its glowing eyes seemed to bore into me. Suddenly, I realized with a jolt that it was chasing me. I screamed in terror and ran for my life up the stairs, never looking back. I had no idea what this mysterious creature was or why it had come after me, but all I cared about now was getting away from it as fast as I could. My pulse raced like thunder as my feet pounded the steps 2 by 2 in an effort to reach safety. But with every step I took, the figure seemed to gain ground on me, its breathing heavy and menacing behind me. Fear coursed through my veins as I frantically raced up the stairs until finally reaching my bedroom door and yanking it shut behind me. My body trembling uncontrollably, I reached for my phone to call 911 only to realize that there was no cell service. I lurked in the corner of my bedroom, gasping for air and my mind filled with panic. What if the creature came back? If only I had windows to escape through. But I was stuck here, trapped in this room with no way out. All I could do was wait it out, wait and hope that it wouldn't come back. So I stayed there, huddled in a corner for what felt like an eternity, as fear and dread consumed me. After 20 long minutes of silence, I finally mustered up just enough courage to get up off the floor and slowly open the door again. The hallway outside was dark and empty, just as it had been when I first ventured down it earlier that night. The creature was gone. Relief flooded through me as I stepped out of the bedroom and back into the hallway. I had to arm myself for protection in case the creature returned, so I started searching around for a weapon. The hallway was dark and clutched with shadows, but as my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I could make out some shapes. A broken vase here, an old chair there. But just when I was about to give up hope of finding anything useful, something glinted in the corner of my eye, a sword. It was made of stainless steel and had an ornate hilt decorated with intricate carvings and jewels. It must have been left behind by one of our ancestors years ago, just lying forgotten in this old house until now. I grabbed it and held it tightly in my hands, feeling strangely comforted by its weight and cold steel against my skin. With a newfound sense of courage, I slowly ventured down the stairs and back towards the living room where I had seen the creature before. But there was nothing there, just an oppressive silence that seemed to linger in the air. After a few minutes of searching, I was about to turn around and go back upstairs when suddenly a chill ran down my spine. The creature had come back. It silently appeared out of nowhere, slowly making its way towards me with those long, bony fingers reaching out for something. My first instinct was to flee, but something deep inside me told me not to move. Instead, I raised my sword and stood my ground. The creature stopped in its tracks and then slowly began retreating until it disappeared into the shadows once more. I stood there for a while afterwards, trembling yet relieved that I had managed to drive it away with nothing more than a sword. But as time passed, I began feeling an odd sensation take over me, a feeling of power coursing through my veins like something inside me had awoken. I knew then that the creature hadn't just been trying to get away, it had been trying to take my soul. But I had prevailed, and soon enough the power within me began to transform into something dark and sinister. With each passing day, I became more and more distant from my family, until one night when my parents returned home after a long day of work, only to find that their daughter was possessed by some unknown force. In an instant, the creature within me took control of my body and forced me to kill them both without remorse or hesitation. And in that moment, I realized with horror that this creature would never truly let me go. It had become part of me now, a dark force inside my soul forevermore. From that day forward, I was a changed person, twisted and corrupted by the evil that had taken over me. No one was safe from my rage, and no amount of kindness could stop me from unleashing the dark creature lurking within. I roamed the world aimlessly until eventually I disappeared without a trace. Some say that I'm still out there somewhere, destroying everything in my path with no remorse or mercy. The faint sound of a car driving away echoed through the quiet house. I shivered and wrapped my arms around my waist, frowning at the cold draft that blew through the windows. A streak of grey light from the moon overhead danced on the floor, painting patterns across the wood. My parents had gone out for a dinner party, leaving me with strict instructions to stay indoors and lock all the doors. I didn't mind. I had my friend, Jake, over to keep me company. We decided to binge-watch horror movies, thinking it would be a fun way to spend the evening. As the night progressed, the wailing wind outside seemed to intensify, and its lonesome cries were punctuated by ominous creaks from within the old house. An eerie soundtrack that suited the horror movie we had chosen perfectly. We laughed together at the jump scares and tried to outdo each other with our best fake screams, although their vibrancy was tempered by the sense of dread that still lingered in the air. But then things took a turn. There was a certain bite to the air, a feeling of wrongness that made us all watchful, like prey animals skittish around the next predator along the food chain. During a particularly tense scene, Jake excused himself to use the bathroom. The moment he left the room, I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was off, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. No, I tried to force away the thoughts that had come over me, but as the minutes passed, I felt a cold fear consume me. With my heart in my throat, I got up and started walking towards the bathroom. But instead of finding Jake, There was just an eerie silence that hung in the air like a fog. I called out his name multiple times, but no response came. My anxiety only grew with each passing moment. Had he left without telling me? Cautiously, I made my way through the hallway, my feet lightly pressing on the groaning floorboards as I walked. That's when I heard it, Jake's voice coming from the basement. I could feel my heart pounding wildly in my chest as I hesitantly stepped into the staircase, the air around me becoming colder for every step that I took deeper down. In the pale light at the bottom of the stairs, I saw Jake standing there with his back to me. "Hey, what are you doing down here?" I asked, my quivering voice barely audible against the quiet of the place surrounding us. No response. I took another step, and that's when I saw it, a glint of something sharp in his hand. It was a large hunting knife, its menacing blade reflecting the moonlight. My stomach churned as I realized what he had in mind. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I stumbled backward, desperately trying to make sense of the situation. "Why, Jake, what's going on?" I stammered, my back pressing against the cold, damp wall. He turned to face me, a sinister grin stretching across his face. His eyes, once friendly, now bore into mine with a malevolence that sent shivers down my spine. He slowly raised his arm up and pointed the knife towards me. An icy chill crept up my spine as he advanced closer. "You shouldn't have seen this," he whispered, with a malicious twinkle in his eyes. I raced up the stairs, fear and rage bubbling in my veins. In front of me was Jake, sweat dripping from his face as he blocked my way. The house now seemed like a deadly arena, my fate to be decided by this fight. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breaths coming in short gasps as I confronted Jake. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I screamed, my voice echoing through the empty house. Jake's expression twisted into a sinister smirk. "You wouldn't understand," he spat, brandishing the knife in his hand. My mind raced as I tried to think of a way out of this. I couldn't overpower Jake. He was much stronger than me, but I had to try. I lunged at him, hoping to knock the knife out of his hand, or at least make him drop it. But he was too quick, sidestepping my attack and grabbing me by the hair. He yanked my head back, exposing my neck. The blade glinted in the moonlight as he held it to my throat. "Shh, shh," he whispered, his breath hot on my ear. "It'll all be over soon, and then we can be together forever." My heart sank at his words. I had never seen this side of Jake before. The Jake I knew was sweet and caring, not a deranged killer. I struggled against his grip, but it was no use. The knife dug deeper into my skin, and I could feel the warmth of my blood trickling down my neck. As I closed my eyes, accepting my fate, I heard a loud bang from upstairs. Jake's grip loosened, and I took the opportunity to break free, running up the stairs as fast as I could. When I reached the top, I saw the front door had been kicked open. My parents had come back and were standing in the doorway, their faces twisted in shock at the sight of me, bloodied and bruised. Without a second thought, I ran towards them, collapsing into my mother's arms as she held me tightly. "What happened? Are you okay?" she asked, her voice shaking with fear and concern. I shook my head and began to sob, unable to explain what had just happened. My father stepped forward and took a deep breath before turning towards the stairs. "Jake," he said firmly, his voice barely above a whisper. He adjusted his grip on the gun before slowly making his way down the staircase, ready to face whatever lay below. I clung to my mother, watching as my father disappeared into the basement. The seconds felt like hours as we waited for any sign of what was happening. Then we heard it, a muffled scream, followed by the sound of a body hitting the ground. My father came back up the stairs, his face grim and his hands shaking. He had taken care of Jake, but the image of his lifeless body was etched into my memory forever. The horror of that night never left me, and I was haunted by the realization that you never truly know someone, no matter how close you may be to them. From that day forward, the once beloved horror movies that I used to watch with Jake became a thing of nightmares, and the cold fear that gripped me that night never truly left my heart. In 2017, my teenage life took an unexpected turn when my parents left me home alone for the first time. I was excited about the freedom, though their strict safety guidelines were drilled into my head. Stay safe, keep everything locked, and no strangers, they reminded. The initial few hours felt liberating. I lounged in our quiet home, watching shows and snacking. However, as darkness approached, odd noises emerged from the outdoors. They sounded like footsteps and faint murmurs, unsettling my peace. I tried to dismiss these sounds as mere figments of my imagination. Boosting the TV's volume, I tried to drown out the unsettling ambiance. Despite my efforts to put the strange noises out of my mind, I couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease as I prepared for bed. I double-checked that all the doors and windows were locked, and then I curled up under the covers, hoping for a peaceful night's sleep. The morning sun streamed into the living room, waking me from an uneasy sleep filled with strange dreams. I brushed off the remnants of sleep, deciding to start my day. That's when I noticed him. A man I hadn't seen before was standing outside the house opposite mine. He wasn't doing anything in particular, just standing there, staring intently at my home. Each time I tried to get a better look, he would tactically move out of sight. It felt unsettling. The constant feeling of being observed made the spacious house feel small and claustrophobic. I decided I needed to do something and protect myself. I locked all the doors and windows, double-checking each one to ensure my safety. My heart raced as I heard a bang on the door. I peeked out from the window, but no one was there. As the day turned to evening, I noticed that the man often lurked around my house, even at odd night hours. It felt like he was always there, watching my every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, but the evidence was mounting and becoming impossible to ignore. With each passing moment, my anxiety and fear grew. I felt trapped, suffocated by the unseen presence that seemed to be closing in on me. I knew I needed help, but who could I turn to? My parents were still out of town. In order to ignore creepy incidents, I decided to watch some TV. I turned on the local news channel and was shocked to see a breaking news report. Displayed on the screen was the mugshot of a notorious criminal who had recently escaped from prison, and he bore a striking resemblance to the man who had been watching my house. I felt my stomach drop as the reporter explained that the escape was considered extremely dangerous and was known for a series of violent home invasions. Suddenly, it all made sense. The man had been observing my house and waiting for the perfect chance to break in, but I was not sure. That night, as the darkness crept in, my senses were on high alert when I heard the sound of glass shattering downstairs. The man had finally decided to break into my house. My heart raced and I quickly hid in my bedroom closet. As I huddled there in the darkness, I managed to pull out my phone and dial 911. I told my address and the situation to the operator, who assured me that the police were on their way. All I could do now was wait and hope that they would arrive in time. I could hear the criminal searching through the house, and it felt like his footsteps were approaching my hiding spot. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find me before the police arrived. Finally, I heard the sound of sirens approaching, and the man's footsteps suddenly grew more frantic. The police burst through the front door, shouting orders for the criminal to surrender. I could hear a struggle, and then the sound of handcuffs clicking into place. Relief washed over me as I realized they had apprehended the man before he could find me. My legs trembled as I emerged from my hiding spot and tears streamed down my face. I knew that I had narrowly escaped a terrible fate, and I was incredibly grateful for the timely intervention of the police. When my parents finally returned home, they were visibly relieved to find me. They had heard about the escaped criminal on the news and were horrified to learn that he had been stalking our home. We hugged each other tightly, thankful that the terrifying ordeal was finally over.